All right, why don't we kick things off while people are slowly filing in? It's very nice to have everyone joining this evening. My name is Kasin Svitkevich, president of the Ukrainian Canadian Professional Business Federation here in Canada. A little bit about UCPBF. We have 5 chapters across the country in Ottawa and Toronto, Saskatoon, Edmonton, and Calgary. And we're always looking for new members and always looking for new ideas for events. So never hesitate to share those with us, either email or chat, even in today's webinar, or in the future, or if you want help setting up a branch in your city, of course, reach out to us as well. Be happy to help you out. A little bit about today's evening from a technical perspective before I introduce our speaker for this evening. You can use the Q&A at the bottom of your screen or the chat to write in any questions you have throughout the presentation. We'll be answering those probably at the end, but if you have anything kind of urgent during the presentation, we'll of course address those as we get to them. So again, feel free to write any questions you have, Q&A or in the chat, and we'll help you out. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our guest speaker for this evening. Jeff Wagner is our speaker talking about Bitcoin. Jeff is an entrepreneur, has been a lifelong entrepreneur, and thrives in the alternative investment world of cryptocurrency and blockchain with a particular focus on what we'll be talking about today, which is Bitcoin. He sees this as a technology as a world-changing force, building businesses within this niche and empowering others to understand and utilize it. So we'll be talking about a lot of that today, and how Bitcoin is more than just a business and just an opportunity out there. It's giving people a form of financial freedom, and we'll talk about, or Jeff will talk about how Bitcoin can be used in various ways, especially in the context of Ukraine, and how people were able to transfer funds and support people in Ukraine. It's almost instantaneously, essentially, when the full-scale invasion began. Jeff actually brings back with over 20 years of experience in the modular home industry, which is quite different from Bitcoin, but lots of experience in the entrepreneurship space. And now he brings over 4 years of experience in the blockchain space, which he says feels like 40 years in the rapidly evolving world of Bitcoin. Absolutely, absolutely true. He also teaches a live online course called Crypto Empowerment, which we'll throw up a slide at the end as well if anyone's interested in getting involved in that. And he also is the project manager of a multi-million-dollar Bitcoin mining operation in West Texas, which we were talking about just before the show. Quite interesting to hear about. So without further ado, I hope all of you find this presentation quite interesting. And Jeff, I'll hand it over to you.
Awesome. Hello, everybody. Hello, fellow Canadians. If you can hear me, can you just type in where you're listening from right now? Just type in the chat. Kind of gives me an idea where everybody's at. I grew up in the Yukon Territory, so I was on the far west of the country, way up north where it was super cold. And I remember, it took 2 days just to get to Vancouver. So it's like pretty cool to think about this, the rest of Canada that actually get to speak out. So cool. Edmonton, Calgary, North Vancouver, Ottawa, Toronto, right on. So again, as a businessman, I also understand that one thing we can't buy more of is time. I mean, money will buy us memories, right? And happiness and things like that. But I take time super serious. And so I promise you tonight that I will 10x your time. All right. If you'll just go with me from the beginning to the end, I'm going to 10x your time with what I'm going to share. I had a very successful business. I sold it at age 37. I've had another business that unfortunately got shut down during a divorce. Again, very successful. But I've never seen anything like the Bitcoin and also the crypto space to be involved in. It's very, very exciting. World changing. So tonight I am going to get into Bitcoin only. I think of Bitcoin, I was telling Cassian, as Bitcoin being over here by itself. There's a Grand Canyon of space, and then there's crypto, Ethereum, NFTs, blockchain, all the other stuff is kind of on this other side. So tonight we're going to talk about Bitcoin only. I do want to say thanks to Cassian for getting me up here, but also to Darren Lemke, if he's listening, for really being the person that kind of got it up another level. But then about everybody else, a friend of mine, Michael Permack, he brought us all together, introduced us, and his grandparents are actually from Ukraine. So now Michael's a little older than me, but I can imagine his grandparents having to come all the way from Ukraine to Canada. Back in that day, you're carrying gold, silver, whatever you're trying to do. And what a tool it would have been if they simply could have had Bitcoin and had it encrypted in the digital world to have access from whatever, part of the world they're going to end up in. So we're going to talk about that. Shout out to David from Saskatchewan, who I know. Awesome to see you listening. Cool. All right, guys. So we'll get going. I'm just going to share my screen here. Okay. Now, as soon as I do this, Cassie, and I can't see you, but just stop me if you can't see the screen, okay?
All good.
All good? Awesome. So, and this is also being recorded, so I think it will be publicly available to your group. But we're going to talk about Bitcoin as an invention. Now, people try to describe Bitcoin in a variety of ways. They talk about it being a commodity, like you'll hear the term often, oh, it's like digital gold. Or, they'll say, well, it's a peer-to-peer money service. And, that's true. You can send money directly to somebody else using Bitcoin. Largest computer network in the world. Again, yeah, very true. People say it's a horrible idea. I've heard that for years. I first bought Bitcoin in 2015, and I remember a lot of people back then think it was a horrible idea, and it was for people who are dictators. Magic internet money. That's another one that people, oh, you're just in that magic internet money. I still hear that today. And then other people are like, Bitcoin, that's crypto, right? That's that blockchain thing. And it's like, well, yeah, it kind of is, but it kind of isn't. Another one, if they're a little more techie and they're on the accounting side, they'll be like, it's a borderless accounting ledger. And I mean, it just sounds so like, wow, you mean an accounting ledger like you use in your business for, debits and credits and where all your money's going? Um, Brand new asset class. I mean, that's true too. It is a brand new asset class. It's something that humans have discovered. Um, and then digital real estate. You'll hear people say, oh, it's like owning Manhattan or owning downtown Toronto or owning Miami Beach real estate. But all of that just tends to put Bitcoin into this, specific framework. And so for the sake of our conversation tonight, I'd really like you to frame Bitcoin as an invention. So rather than trying to put it into the box, one of the best ways you can think of it is an invention. So you see this picture that AI was so kind to make of me with a woman. She's got a wheel, right? Big wheel behind her. Back in the day, there was a time when people didn't have wheels, right? They were dragging things with sticks behind them. And you can imagine the first person that kind of figures out, oh man, Cassian, what if we made a wheel? Well, what would that look like? Well, we do this and that. What if, and would probably was clunky and didn't really work. And some people would say that's a bad idea. And then, eventually Jason's up at the top of the hill and he pushes it somehow and it rolls down and hurts somebody and they're all mad at him. And it's, but eventually it gets better and better. And once that innovation's figured out, like humans aren't going back to dragging things behind them anymore, right? They're going to say, no, I want to use a wheel because this invention is changing everything. Similar to fire, right? People would get fire and they'd be like, oh, fire's bad. It can burn you. It can hurt you. It can destroy things, right? But also people figured out, hey, if I build fire, it's going to keep me warm. It's going to serve humans very, very well. And Bitcoin's kind of like that, right? It's like the wheel of our digital world. It's like the fire of our digital world. But now people have figured out how to take that fire, put it inside an engine, and then drive an automobile or fly a plane or take a ship across the ocean, right? So this is where we are today. And I just encourage everybody that's listening to think of this as an invention. Now, what is Bitcoin? Like, as we get into this, Bitcoin is proof of work. Now, if you're, most of you are listening, I believe, are probably business people or entrepreneurs like myself. If you have to pay somebody to do work for you, you don't just give them the money, right? And just be like, oh, here you go, you're good to go. You're like, no, I want to see you do the work. Like, you need to come into the office, check in at 8 o'clock, you need to work. If you're going to go farm, right, then I want to see, your tractors out there and things working, right? Well, Bitcoin being made is no different than that. Computers are actually in a race to mine. We use the word mining by solving very incredible, complex math problems. All right. Now, in order to, and I'll show you a picture here in a minute. In order to solve those complex math problems, you need hardware. So just like all of you are using a computer of some kind to listen to me right now, you need a computer like that, except that our computers that we use are 2,000 to 3,000 times more powerful than the computer you're using right now. You also need a place to store it, right? Just think of any kind of equipment. You can't just leave it out there in the rain, right? These are computers. They've got to be under cover, some kind. Then you need people to manage it. Then you need electricity to power that. All of that is proof of work. And now everybody's in a race around the world to solve these very complex math problems. And when you solve that math problem, you actually get a Bitcoin. You're rewarded with 1 Bitcoin. And that would be great. Everybody'd be like, awesome, Bitcoin's worth almost 100,000 US dollars. I'm just going to get a whole bunch of computers and let's all win and we'll get more and more Bitcoin. But the inventors of Bitcoin, they were smart. They said, we need to make a limit to how much Bitcoin could get mined each day. Currently, it's about 450 per day from now until April 2028. But then after that, it's going to get cut in half. It'll decrease by 50%. So the reward will go down to 225 a day. So even though you could bring in $1 billion worth of computers today, and you could go to proof of work, and you're like, I'm going to create warehouses, I'm going to find these complex math problems, and I'm going to solve the problem, you still would be limited to only being able to potentially get 450, and you'd be sharing with all these other people racing around the world to try to solve the complex math problem. So that's an important concept to get as we move forward. Now, this is what it looks like. This is a picture. We mine Bitcoin. This is a picture I took of myself off my iPhone. You'll hear how enthusiastic I was. So here we are, and we're gonna go take a look inside, see what we got going on here. Look at that.
You think it looks great with the lights on?
Yep. Check that out. Feel the wind. There we are. That's the sound of money right there. Mining Bitcoin. I'm a little excited on that one. The there's a shot with the lights off. That's, you didn't really capture it that well on the video, but you can see those machines. They're designed to only mine Bitcoin. You can see that there's a container in this case, custom made. There's fans, there's filters, there's people like Nick there in the picture who's taking care of it, and that's essentially what a small Bitcoin mining operation looks like. And the reason I wanted you to see that is it just tends to make it a little more real for people to actually see the hardware and the machines and the electricity that we need to mine a Bitcoin. So some characteristics of this Bitcoin invention that are important to understand. The biggest one is the scarcity aspect of it. There is a fixed supply of 21 million. That's it. So the way the software was created was to have it as a deflationary asset. So if you can think about anything else in the world, we tend to figure out a way to get more of it as it becomes more valuable. So if you're in Alberta, they have oil, right? And they figured out oil sands, and people figured out fracking, and that where people for a long time thought, hey, we're going to get to peak oil. Remember that? If you're my age, peak oil, the world's going to run out of oil. And then people figure out new technology of how to get more oil. They discovered gold, similar, right? There was just a big deal here recently where a bunch of gold was discovered. But with Bitcoin, it's the invention that has a fixed supply. So 21 million is programmed in the software that's all will ever be. And that's a really, really important thing to understand. The other thing that's just as important is the decentralization aspect of it. So all those computers that you just saw, we choose to run those. It's voluntary to participate in the Bitcoin network. There's millions of people around the world using the network, but nobody's forcing you to use it. You don't have to use it. I don't have to mine Bitcoin. I don't have to participate, right? Bitcoin doesn't have a CEO, doesn't have a board, but what it does have is hundreds of millions of people around the world choosing to use it. And many different countries, religions, politics, languages, they all are choosing to use it. That makes it decentralized. That's a very powerful aspect. It's also an immutable ledger. So that means the transactions are transparent and that you don't get to go back and erase it, right? It's like you know, you don't get to go change the news or change the history. Bitcoin's been running for 15 years. These blocks of data linked together. The next one's formed. Now there's a chain. They just keep going and going and going and going. And that means that you can look back at transactions that happened 10 years ago, and it just makes the whole thing very, very secure. Now, that ledger's public, but who it is that's using it, it's not as public. Now, it's still easy to figure it out. Like if I send Bitcoin, you know, from let's say I buy it from Cassian, and then I say send it to my wallet. Here's my address. Then Cassian in that case would know it was me, right? Because I'm doing that transaction with them. But if you were to see that transaction happen on the Bitcoin network, you wouldn't know it's Cassian sending to me. You just see something's happened, right? It's also permissionless, and I love this because this is really powerful to me. Anybody with an internet connection can send or receive Bitcoin. That's all you need. It's like sending an email. It's the same idea, right? You can't really stop that. So whether you were pro truckers or against the trucker lockdown in Canada, when our government declared them to be, you know, terrorists and said you can't crowdfund, you can't support people that were there peacefully protesting, they froze crowdfunding, they froze people's bank accounts. But what was unique in Canada was they couldn't stop Bitcoin from going to help those people. And I was quite public on Facebook at the time because I had a friend who was there, and I said, look, if I bring them food, right? Like if you can't go buy food, right? If I bring his kids, how's his kids gonna eat, right? He's got 3 kids. If I bring them food, like am I helping terrorism? Is that what you've done because of how you've labeled this protest, right? So what was interesting was even though our government in Canada came out and said to exchanges, stop this, you know, the exchangers are like, sorry, you can't stop Bitcoin. It's like an internet connection. If they have an internet connection or a phone, somebody can send them Bitcoin. And I love that freedom of not needing anybody's permission to choose to support or send funds as needed. And then there's the security aspect of it. This is the most secure computer network in the world. There isn't a more secure network. And it's open source, which makes it even more secure. And then I just talked to you about proof of work. You saw how those machines had to work, had to come to consensus to solve these complex math puzzles, right? And once you know the answer to the complex math puzzle, it's easy to go back and double check it. But until you know the answer, right, there's a race to try to figure that out. Our next slide, everybody always says, well, what backs this invention? All right, what's up with this Bitcoin thing, Jeff? And if you're thinking of that right now, or thought of that, it's sometimes I wish I could see you guys because it would be like cool to see the looks on people's faces. But if you're thinking about that, here's what's backing it. There's computing power, there's electrical power, there's economic power. So we're at about 96, 97,000 Bitcoin, somewhere around there right now in US dollars. At 90,000, Bitcoin has a market capitalization over $1.8 trillion. And then there's political power. So you have to think about the fact that in early 2024, there was roughly 580 million people using cryptocurrency. Now, that includes Bitcoin and all the other cryptos. But all those people, because Bitcoin is the largest cryptocurrency, it's roughly around 55% of the total cryptocurrency market capitalization. All of those people have a vested interest in seeing Bitcoin succeed. All right. They want to see it succeed. They want to see this work because they own it. They're using it, right? And that's expected to grow to 850 to 950 by the end of this year, which we're almost there now. We also have a president coming up in the United States who's super pro crypto. He's actually dropped NFTs, as we call it. They've launched a crypto coin. The Trump family has, and he's bringing together a bunch of pro crypto people into the White House. And that's where even political power comes in, because now that you're involved in this, now that you see the uses of this invention, you become much more favorable to it. And that's what we're seeing happening right now in the United States. And then there's decentralization. So because no single person or group has control, you don't get the influence of just a stronger person or a more politically corrected person or all of the, the games that go on in the world politically wise. Okay. It doesn't work that way, right? You just have consensus of everybody agreeing to use it and going this path. And then there's also a spiritual aspect to this. So because Bitcoin is immutable, it's transparent, it's code, right? Then there's also this belief that whatsoever is true, honest, just, pure, and of a good report will prevail. In other words, the good guys will win, right? And I quite like that also. So how are you guys liking this so far? Because there's one slide I want you to get. That's this slide right here. This is what's happening with this invention. It's the first time in the history of humans that we're able to take our energy that we have today, and we're actually able to seamlessly integrate that energy into the digital realm. Now you can see the bridge here, right? I don't know if anybody's ever walked that bridge, but it's a pedestrian bridge. You're going to go from one side to the other, right? Allows you to cross a river that's there in Ukraine and allows you to get to the other side quicker than having to take a boat or having to walk, get around to another bridge. And so it does what it's supposed to do. Now, if you can think of those computers I just showed you all working, right? One side of the bridge, of the Bitcoin bridge, is anchored in physics. All right, that's over here. That's all the electrical you saw. That's all the humans. That's all those computers. Everything's anchored in physics there. And my apologies for not spelling the Ukraine's capital correctly. I will adjust that. Thank you. And so on this side of the bridge is, physics, right? And now when you come across the other side of the bridge over here, that's anchored in mathematics. And that's where, if I said to you, for example, I'm going to look at, let me see here. Is it Oksana? Did I say that? Probably butchered that name. My apologies. But I'm going to look and I'm going to say, okay, man, what's 2 plus 2? And of course, they're going to say 4. And I'm going to say, well, show me 4. Let me touch 4. Well, here, I'll get you four fingers. Here's 4 fingers. Touch the 4 fingers. And I'm like, well, no, that's fingers. I want to taste 4. Well, let me smell 4, right? And all of that you can't do because math is just up on our minds, right? But yet we use math every day. It's literally for you to be able to watch this Zoom call right now. There's ones and zeros in the computer world that are going back and forth with impulses of electricity, allowing you digitally to see my screen and see me speak. But yet it's not real. But then people would say, well, actually it is real because I can see it. Right? But the math side of it, right? So that's that abstract thing that gets messy sometimes. We start to think it through, but then we realize like I can't really touch 4 and hold 4. It's just an expression. But that's what we're doing when we bridge from physics and we take our energy, we come across the bridge and we use mathematics on the other side, and then it digitizes and encrypts our real world energy. That allows us to store it into what I call digital monetary fuel cells. And now that bridge is protected around the world by hundreds of millions of people, all making sure that it stays solid and strong and nothing can break it, which makes it the most secure computer network in the world. And then when I need my digital monetary fuel cells, I can just access them from anywhere in the world and somebody else will buy them from me, or I can trade for goods and services. It's very, very easy. So why is it important? Well, you can buy $100 worth of Bitcoin and you can buy $5, $10. You can buy 2 billion, right? It's completely permissionless. It's completely voluntary to be involved. But Michael Saylor made a really good quote. He said, for the first time in the history of the world, we are seeing global digital wealth, giving equal property rights to every belonging citizen in the world. So in other words, just because you got lucky and were born somewhere, right? You get to participate in certain things that first world people do. But if you're born in another country, right, you don't get to participate in our stock markets and our banking and things like that. If you're in a depressed country, like a third world country, most people can't, right? If you moved here, say from the Ukraine, you might have had difficulty getting a bank account set up at the beginning until you had all the proper documentation and stuff. Not so with Bitcoin. Bitcoin, as long as you have an internet connection, you can open up a Bitcoin wallet and you can participate in the Bitcoin network, right? You can participate by taking some of your energy and encrypting it using that bridge of technology and then storing that energy. And that becomes your digital asset. And wherever you are, you're able to do what you need to with it. Check this out. It's simply pure economic energy. So this same asset now is the same supply, the same qualities, and it's financialized everywhere in the world. So you can think of Alberta, right? Has so much oil versus other places, right? You don't have much oil out in Toronto and Ontario, right? There's other countries, like Saudi Arabia has a lot of oil. But then, you go to Africa, they have a little bit there. But then you go to other places and, like Hawaii is like, sorry, man, we don't have any oil. We got volcanoes, right? But yet, for all these places around the world, there's still the same supply of Bitcoin available. Doesn't matter if you live in Ukraine or Russia, right? Which obviously we know they're at war there. But also you go down to New Zealand, right? Farther other side of the world, and they still have the same amount of Bitcoin. There's still the same supply, right? And there's also still the same value. Now, it might be more important to certain people to have some Bitcoin in their life than other people, okay? But the dollar value equivalent is still equalized throughout the world. That's the first time humans have ever invented anything like this. Gold would be worth, certain things in different parts of the world based on abundance and things like that. So it's very, very interesting. I put this quote down at the bottom. Bitcoin is the new oil for the digital world and the internet. So just like the discovery of oil has opened up our world to have heavy machinery and factories and vehicles and planes and all of that, Bitcoin is that oil now for our digital world. The internet needs a monetary source of payment. AI needs to be able to open a wallet and open another wallet and send funds to an AI. This is what we're seeing happening here now. So how did this Bitcoin invention benefit Ukraine? I screen shared a few news articles that I could see. Most of this was within a few days of the war breaking out. Ukraine had raised at least $11 million through Bitcoin donations. There was a wallet there. Once the Ukrainian officials posted addresses for 2 crypto wallets, it gave the donors a direct and clear address to send their contributions. Those wallets attracted more than 10 million US dollars just 4 days after the start of the invasion. So what happened was when that war broke out, ATMs were overrun, right? People couldn't get money, banks were shut down, the country's in chaos. But nobody could stop Bitcoin from going into the country. Nobody could stop you or me from sending somebody Bitcoin to help them. And there's some pretty famous stories about people who escaped. There's one story about a journalist who was right there in the thick of it, was able to buy a car with Bitcoin, was able to drive out and document what was going on and get across the border, and then was able to take Bitcoin to an ATM machine and then get euros out in ATMs and basically survive, right? It was really incredible to see the support that could happen, but also the ability to directly help people if they had an internet connection within a matter of a few minutes. It's a very, very powerful idea. And now I'll say this too. Depending on who you want to help, it's your choice. So if my wife and I want to help Afghanistan teachers who are women teach young girls how to read and write because we feel that that's a morally better choice than the current regime, which says women can't learn and can't learn to read or write and can't be taught these things like math and science and those, very important things. That Bitcoin wallet address is public information. We can go to that wallet address and we can just copy and paste it, and we can send Bitcoin there to support those teachers, and they can get paid and they can continue to help the good work that they do. So there's a lot of benefits to this invention. Now, what about investment? I know most of your business people, you're probably going, well, what has it done? Now, this is an old slide because in the last 30 days, we had a big run up. We're up somewhere in the, like around, I said, around the $96,000 mark. But in the last 10 years, we've seen Bitcoin's value grow by 63% a year. In the last 5 years, we've seen it grow by 76% a year. So if you had invested and just held and done nothing, you don't have to manage it, right? You don't have to check with your finance guy. You're not having to pay an employee or anything else. You just have to buy it, secure it, and leave it. Just let it grow. Or if you're a business person, you might want to buy it, put it on your books from your accounting perspective and say, yeah, we have some cash on our books, but you know what? I'm going to buy some Bitcoin instead. I'll keep it on my books. And because Bitcoin's liquid, if I need to sell it, I can sell it quickly, get the cash back into the bank account. And there it is, right? I mean, it's a very good return. I have, typically here in Canada, I can, in about 2 hours, convert my Bitcoin into cash and have it sitting in my TD bank account. It's that easy once you know what you're doing. But what if you'd bought Bitcoin at the worst possible times? So this is a super recent stat, but at the absolute worst 4 years, your compound annual growth rate for Bitcoin is 24%. You just had to hold for 4 years. So as of November 17th, 4 years, if you just kept going forward, you'd say, well, 4 years from now, if I bought at the worst possible time, because I just come in, I forget about it, whatever, I'm $215,000 ahead. 5 years later, I'm at 267. 10 years later, I'm at 782,000. If it keeps going, buying at the worst possible time and only getting 24% a year, not the 63% a year that people have done in 10 years or the 76 in the last 5, but just buying at the absolute worst possible time. But however, the current annual growth rate is actually about 50% right now. So if you assume this and you came in again and you bought Bitcoin at 96,000, or you bought $1,000 worth or $10,000 worth, you could look forward and say, well, even then, 4 years from now, I'm at 461,000. 5 years from now, I'm at 691, and 10 years from now, I'm at 5.2 million. That's the power of an asset that's in demand around the world, that has a fixed supply, that's very hard to make and costs a lot of money to create. If that doesn't tweak your interest to learn more, I don't know what does. It's even this year alone, if you've been holding Bitcoin, if you came into the beginning of 2024 with Bitcoin, you're up over 100%. It's amazing. And it's only going to keep growing as there's more worldwide demand for it, especially with a pro-crypto president coming up in January in the United States. How are we for time? Good. There's various ways to buy Bitcoin. You can buy from a reputable cryptocurrency broker like Coinbase or Kraken. You can buy with cash. Some people will do that. If you just search Bitcoin ATM, Google it, you'll find them in Toronto, you'll find them in Alberta, you'll find them here in BC. There's one just down the street, 10 minutes from me, where we can go fuel up at a gas station. They're all around once you start looking for them. You can also buy peer-to-peer. You can also buy with an app on your phone. It's that easy. So peer-to-peer would be, you'd find somebody, it might be like, look, I'm doing business, but I'd like to get a little Bitcoin. Maybe, we can do business together and I'll take some Bitcoin, or, and you pay me and, I'll give you my services, right? That's another way to get Bitcoin. You'll see some business people will do that. I'll see this every now and then. Somebody will be out there and they'll say, listen, we take Bitcoin. And what they're trying to do is just say take 10% of their business in Bitcoin. And that way they put it on their books. It's all legitimate. It's all there on their books. And then that 10% just stays and grows. save for a rainy day, right? You don't have to invest in real estate. You don't have to go invest in the stock market. It's just something they can have. And if they ever need to sell it because they need to convert the cash for a business emergency, or maybe they need to make a big capital expenditure to buy something, they just sell the Bitcoin and they have the money ready to go. Now, one thing I want to point out, shout out to AI for making me this cool picture. There's a saying in our world, not your keys, not your coins. So some of you might want to go out after this, you're gung-ho, you're excited. I got to find out more about Bitcoin. I'm going to go buy it with a broker and I'm going to get some Bitcoin, or I'll buy an ETF, a Bitcoin ETF. But this picture here is a really secure vault. There's gold inside there, and that vault has a key. And you can see there's a little spot. You probably can't see it on your screens that easy, but there's a little place there that has a key, right? So if you have the key, you can open the vault. So one thing you have to remember about Bitcoin, because it's on a blockchain, right? Anybody who has the key to your wallet or your vault can open it, right? So if I give you the key to the vault, again, David could come in and he could open the vault and have access to whatever's in there, right? Because it's digital. It's not like he has to come to my house and open a safe. He just has to have the digital key. He could then digitally open the vault, right? And get it. So if you don't have the key, then really it's not your coin. So we like to mention that, because a lot of people will open it up and have it sit their Bitcoin sitting with a broker, or have their Bitcoin with a third party because they're going to get a little interest on it. But what you're basically doing is giving up your keys to somebody else, and you're trusting them. And when the time comes and you want your Bitcoin back, or this picture, your gold back, that they'll have it and give it to you. And that they're not going to say, oh, no, well, actually, we changed our mind. We're going to give you this instead. Or, well, we feel you don't need it. Or somebody hits you with a lawsuit and they freeze all your accounts and say, prove us that, your employee was driving drunk. Well, he's, till that's sorted out, everything's frozen, right? Well, if your Bitcoin's sitting with a broker somewhere, you wouldn't have access to it because everything gets frozen. But if your Bitcoin is in your own digital world, in your own digital private vault, only you have the keys, then only you can access your Bitcoin. And you can access that Bitcoin from anywhere in the world. So if you want to open a vault on your phone, this is one easy way. When I teach a class, I actually get people to open this live as we go through the class, and they get to see it. Xverse is a secure wallet, well rated. You just go to the App Store, you choose Xverse, you install the app. Now, if you want to do this, feel free. You could just screenshot this and follow it along. But whatever you do, you want to write down your words. And so I talked to Cassian before, and I was just going to surprise somebody listening and give them some Bitcoin. And I thought, hey, that would be cool, right? But I can't really do it because I can't see you guys the way the presentation's done. So I can't get you to like hold your phone up and then I just snap it. But Cassian, if you don't mind, if could be my my guinea pig, I'm going to get you on to follow these instructions. I mean, you're a tech savvy guy. You got this webinar started. And just that's the app right there, Xverse, and you should be good to go. And if anybody listens, yeah, if anybody's listening and wants to try this, go ahead and let me know if it's easy or hard in the chat. And then I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And let me say, while he's doing that, the reason I like to do this example live, and when I speak at conferences or that, I often will do this with everybody, and I'll give away some Bitcoin there. The reason I like to do it live is so that you can see how easy it is. A lot of people feel this space is super complicated. It's really hard. And it used to be, I mean, back in the day, seed phrases written down manual on paper and you're trying to, do transaction. It wasn't that easy. All right. You're sending funds to some broker in Japan called Mt. Gox, and you're hoping that you'll get your Bitcoin back to you. And but nowadays it's way, way easier. And it's very Very, very straightforward. And the reason that I think everybody should learn this is that this is the way the world is going. We're going to see more and more use cases for this invention. Recently in Guatemala, they actually certified their election results live real time with the Bitcoin blockchain. So what they did is they took, and this is why I say it's an invention, they started counting things up and tallying them, and everybody, all the volunteers are around there, they're looking at it, and then they said, okay, we all agree there's so many votes. Let's say there's 173 votes. We're going to upload it on the Bitcoin blockchain. Now it's time-stamped on this ledger, right? 173 votes. Here it is. Boom. It's done. And then they're able to go back after the voting's closed and they're verifying everything. Everybody's able to see that real time, this was fairly done and done correctly. And what's crazy, guys, get this. In the United States, in the last election, there's this county in the state of Georgia who everybody said was crooked, and there was all this fraudulent voting going on. And I don't know if you pay attention to the news much, but there's a lot of like, you know, the machines weren't working, fraudulent voting going on. And what ended up happening there was these same people came into that county and they actually did it real time the same way in the United States at this last presidential election, which is just mind-blowing to me.
Set up.
No way. I'm going to stop.
Hopefully.
That was quick. All right, guys, how much in US dollars, how much Bitcoin should I give to Cassian? What do you think? Can we keep it below 100? 50?
$5 sounds great.
Well, let's do 50. You can do some good with it if you decide to do some good. Unless somebody wants to type in. Michael's saying 50. All right. So all I need you to do, if you go to receive on the app,
Yep.
just click receive and then choose the QR code version. And if you hold it up, I should be able to send you some right now. All right, we'll find out how good Zoom is. Here we go. Voila. It's there. Done. Okay. We'll send it to you now, sir. I'll do it not too expensive. I'll do it medium, not super fast, because medium only cost me $1.27 to send it. I could be sending you 100,000. I click review transaction. Transactions broadcasted. And there you go. Now, I'm going to go see transaction, see that it's going through. I'm going to leave it off to the side. Now, a lot of people will tell you Bitcoin is very slow. But this is what I say to people. If you had to send half your wealth around the world in an emergency, would you care that it took 10 minutes or 60 minutes to go through? Or is what really matters is that it just works and goes through, right? All right. So Cassian, I'm going to keep going. But I will, I'll share my screen. But please, as soon as you see that go through, just interrupt me and let me know you got it.
Sounds good.
Cool. And you can decide, let us know if you're buying pizza or what, or are you going to send it to somebody in Ukraine?
We'll
what
find
you're
a
gonna do
charity
with
in
it.
Ukraine who could use that, absolutely.
All right. So there you go. Now, if anybody actually opened a wallet and tried that, shout out to you, because hit me up at the end. I might share some Bitcoin with you too. So why now? Like, why get into this now? Why would I give this speech now? Well, a lot of people say, well, I'm way too late. You know, I remember Bitcoin was at $5,000 or $1,000. You know, I never bought any, or a friend told me about it at 50, right? And I never did anything. And now it's almost $100,000. Well, I still think you're very early. It's only just now in January of this year that Wall Street actually adopted Bitcoin ETFs, electronically traded funds. We're seeing the first pro crypto president. I mentioned that. That's a big deal. Like, I flew to Mar-a-Lago because I was part of an NFT project that President Trump did. And I'm a libertarian, so I'm very much the less government, the better. But first, do no harm, right? That libertarian principle. But I went there because of the experience to be able to say, hey, I'm there with the president of the United States who's actually embracing our technology, because we've had just this horrible fight. I mean, so many people think it's bad and it's not, there's no good use for it. And you know, it's waste electricity and everything else. It's kind of like, you know, back when electricity was invented, you know, there's cartoons of people hanging off of wires and everything's burning down and people are freaked out about it because the power of it, right? Just like if you're a caveman and you discover fire, you're freaked out about the power of fire, but yet you understand that it can warm you and keep you alive, right? And the energy that's there, it's all about harnessing energy. So it's a big deal to see a president embrace Bitcoin and crypto. Also, we're seeing the rise of AI this year has been amazing, right? AI now is able to send crypto back and forth, right? They can send Bitcoin back and forth to each other and pay for things. We're going to have AI agents that are going to do work for us. Like they'll do accounting work and just charge for it and pay for it in crypto, right? Your washer and drying machine are going to figure out the best time and the most optimal time to run themselves and wash your clothes and dry your clothes, and they'll just pay for that immediately in crypto and get the best rate from your hydro company. You know, we're going to see things like that. But eventually, we're all going to have to adopt the new rules of the digital world. Now, I don't know if chess is a thing in Ukraine. I would assume it is, right? If any of you have ever played chess, right? But if you've played chess, imagine that you start out playing chess, but you only know 4 of the rules, right? And that's it. That's all you get. And you're like, this is a cool game. I got chess. I got my king, my queen, my pawns, right? But you only got 4 of the rules. But now you're going to come against somebody who has all the rules, and you're going to play against them, right? What's going to happen? You're going to lose, right? Because you're only playing with 4 of the rules. Okay, but now you're against somebody who has all the rules. Well, guys, we're living in a digital world right now. You have got to learn these rules. The rules have been able to store and encrypt your energy and protect it digitally is a game changer. That's like being the super grandmaster chess guy, right? Now you show up at the table and you just walk right through and you beat everybody at chess because you have all the rules. You're empowered in a way that nobody else is. And this is what Bitcoin is doing to the world. And this is how it's changing everything. Everybody in the world is getting equal property rights to secure and encrypt their energy. And everybody in the world is willing to pay for that on a fixed supply of only 21 million. This is a game changer, and you definitely need to be a part of it. So if you're watching, you can shut your eyes for this. If I'm speaking live, I at an audience of people, I ask them to do it if they can. But if you had to wake up tomorrow as someone else in the world, so you get all your knowledge, you get all your wisdom, but you just don't know who that person is or where they're going to live, right? So you're going to be Yarko. You're going to wake up, but where are you waking up? You don't know, right? What's going on? Where do you live? What's happening, right? Well, you might be, you know, one of the people that, you know, is perhaps born in China. That would make a lot of sense because about 21% of you are going to be born in China. And you're going to be under a dictatorship, communist dictatorship. Another 20% or 21% of you are going to be born in India. And good chance you're going to be very, very poor. And, you know, roughly, you know, part of a engaging nation, right? Or you might get lucky and be one of the few that are born in, you know, North America or Europe somewhere. But there's a good chance too, and about 18% of you are going to be born unbanked. You won't have a bank account. Your parents won't have a bank account, right? You're not going to be able to, you know, get any real wealth. You're going to fight and claw to try to get a little bit of something to survive your day. And it's going to be incredibly hard for you to store any of your energy. And if you have to flee any of these countries because you're desperate to get out and try to make a better life for your family, if you're like other refugees currently today, you're swallowing any euro bills or any US dollar bills you can as you cross borders. And then That way the border guards won't rob you because it's in your stomach, and you hope the increment later on the next day won't hurt too bad, and you'll be able to claw through and take out that bill of $10 because it just might change your life. So wherever you wake up tomorrow, whatever you live like, whatever country you're in, I ask you this question in closing: would you want to live in a world with Bitcoin or without Bitcoin? Because if you're one of those people, you're going to probably find out that Bitcoin is a lifeline. Bitcoin's a game changer for you. Bitcoin gives you the ability to encrypt your energy.
Well, Jeff, I think
Okay.
on that, I think we got came through
Perfect.
about a couple minutes ago. So
Awesome.
excellent
Thank
timing.
you on the final closing part, but also, so here's the thing. I could have been sending you funds in Ukraine if I wanted to support you, right? I could be
Yeah.
sending them to somebody else. We did it across Canada. You're in Ottawa. I'm on Vancouver Island, right? But it's that easy.
Yeah, thanks very much, Jeff. So maybe excellent presentation. I think a really good overview in terms of the intro to Bitcoin. It's such I think for so many people there's so much to learn, especially for myself as well. I think maybe I have two questions for you to start off. If anyone has any questions, feel free to type them into the Q&A or chat, and I'll read those out to Jeff as we go along. But maybe the first one in terms of I know we talked briefly about the donations to Ukraine. Um, you know, Ukraine themselves, not only the government accepted cryptocurrencies as donations because from anyone in the world, but also many charities. So maybe you can talk just briefly about we saw the speed kind of here, but about the dollar amount. That this was $50, but maybe the size, whether it's $5 or 50,000, kind of talk about that.
Sure. So you could send whatever amount you want. Nobody can stop that. So early this year, somebody moved over $2 billion and transferred it for less than $4. So what I found powerful is that, like, I just sent you $50, right? But imagine you're like the Ukrainian guy that I met. And this is what kind of kickstarted this whole thing, guys. Is I met this guy. He doesn't speak English. He's in Canada here. He's by himself. I think if I remember the story right, his family, wife and kids are back in Ukraine. He's working as a tiler. He's a good, really skilled tiler, but he's doing whatever work he could. And I complimented him on the work, and he's like, I can't, I have to be walking to this house. He's like, I can't hear you. And he pulls this app up, and he's, translating it and letting me know he can't, right? So I'm thinking about that person. I'm thinking, my gosh, this guy's super skilled. He's making money. How does he send any money to his family in Ukraine? Well, if he's going the traditional way, he's got to, get a bank or a Western Union or somebody. They're robbing him blind in conversion rates and fees and charges, anything else. Then he has to hope it gets there, and that on their end, whoever's getting it is able to receive it correctly. The bank's open. They can even get to a bank, depending on the emergency. Or if they have Bitcoin, he could just do what I just did with you, Cassian, and just transfer whatever amount. Could be $50 as a surprise. Could be $500 to cover rent payments. Could be an emergency and they need to get out of there in a hurry and literally buy their freedom. And you could be sending $5,000 or $10,000 and saving a life.
Absolutely, yeah. So I think that instantaneous piece is fascinating. I know I work with sending even a wire to someone else in Canada, or luckily in Canada we have e-transfers, but even that, for example, is $3,000 kind of max, and it still takes that awkward moment when you're buying something on Facebook Marketplace and you have to stand in someone's
Right.
Foyer, and you're awkwardly waiting for it to kind of go through for the $20, whatever you bought. But maybe the next question, while encouraging our viewership also to send those in, talk about it's kind of the Bitcoin ETF, but in a way more broader sense, is how people view, people kind of maybe might be scared. Those numbers are, the growth charts obviously are lovely to have, but for those people who are just kind of getting into it and going, how do people get a part of it into their larger portfolio? They want stability, they want to get into it, they don't want to, all throw all their money in, obviously, but they want to get into it a little bit. So how do they think they start in terms of they want to go, 1% or 0.5% or 3% of their kind of portfolio?
Yeah.
How do they start with that?
So there's a quote I use, and I didn't put it into this, but it's basically like this. It's unknown who the person was who said it, but they said, look, if I take 1% of my wealth and I put it into Bitcoin, and you know it doesn't work out, have I really haven't lost that much, right? But what if the opposite is true? Like, what if Bitcoin is becoming the world's primary digital payment system? Well, if I put 1% in and it does go and I'm early, then everything changes for me, right? That's a game changer. And even if you just look at it from a historical viewpoint of what the asset's done, right? I mean, you need volatility to make you money, right? Anything that's boring and safe doesn't make you any money. But if you think about it from a business standpoint, let's say you and I are, you're in the web business, right? Web pages and whatnot. Say we're competing businesses, right? It's very competitive, our business. And I decide, that, you know what, 5 years ago, I'm going to start putting Bitcoin on my balance sheet of my company. And I only put in like 5%, let's say, right? Not much. You, on the other hand, hear about the opportunity, but you pass by. You're like, I'm not interested. I'm just keep doing what I'm doing. I'll just keep saving cash in the bank. Well, here's what happens with your cash. You're going to lose money through inflation. It won't buy you as much. But my side, the 5% that I did, I'm up 5 years later over 1,500% on my five. So now I'm up somewhere over 25%. Now, I'm like, hey, I need to make a big capital purchase, and I'm able to come in and buy even more and expand even more and compete against you even more because now I have way more capital because it's just made me, right? Where your cash is sitting there and buys you less. So we see this, we understand inflation, how much it robs us of our wealth. But then when you get into businesses that are competing against each other, you recognize if one even adopts a small amount of a Bitcoin standard, it becomes a game changer for their company, right? And it does the same thing for individuals. The key is this, Cassie, and you just have to wait a bit. You have to be willing to ride the volatility and just, like I said, if you invested in the last 4 years, you've done really, really well. As of this week, basically anybody who's invested in 4 years or who's held their Bitcoin for more than 4 years is up over 250%. And with a cap supply of 21 million, you can see why, right? That you can't just make more of it. It's a scarce digital asset.
Yeah, I think it's a very, kind of interesting thing you talked about at the beginning in terms of, the cap of it. If, it's not like gold of, we thought we were going to run out of gold, and then we discover, someone discovers a better technology. We're able to spend more money to go find it somewhere in a more remote region, and inevitably we always find kind of more of it. So definitely something interesting, and part of a broader investment strategy in terms of having not all your eggs in one basket, but having definitely a neat opportunity to diversify maybe what you're doing now. But I think someone asked a
And
very
at a bare minimum, at least just pursue and consider it, right?
yeah.
And if you have a financial advisor who says, no, it's way too risky, you shouldn't do anything into it, you need to walk away and give yourself a real hard question. That financial advisor has just advised you to not participate in the fastest growing digital asset the world's seen in the last 15 years. That's like saying don't buy Apple stock, right? Don't get into Google, don't get into Facebook, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you have to ask yourself, why are they telling you that? It simply means, in my opinion, they haven't done the work. And then you should go find somebody who's done the work, who really understands the system, because there's Larry Fink, the head of BlackRock, which has over $10 trillion under management, is the one who pushed the Bitcoin ETFs through this year. So, I mean, if
Absolutely.
he knows what he's doing.
So David had asked a question about where can we get more education on cryptocurrency and to slowly learn more about it. So what are some maybe kind of your key areas that or resources that you would look towards?
Well, I mean, mention the course that we do, but there's some great information out there. There's a few books. The Bitcoin Standard is kind of a famous book written by Safety Amos. Um, there's a new book out called Resistance Money that I quite like. I've read that. Um, the biggest thing really is find somebody you can trust and just get some education from and learn. There's a lot of junk and crap out there. There's a lot of of stuff that's regurgitated that's not true. So, and there's a lot of errors where what happens is Bitcoin gets a bad reputation because of things like the FTX collapse, where the broker literally stole people's Bitcoin, right? And then did the shitcoin stuff and used it all wrong, and yet people think it's a Bitcoin problem, but it's not. Like if I give you my gold and you steal it, it's kind of on me for giving it to you, but it's also on you for not being trustworthy and stealing it, right? It's not the gold's problem, it's the fact that you're a thief. So it's really about just easing into it and learn what you can. I mean, I love following Michael Saylor, great guy. I mean, he knows his stuff for sure. There's some other good names. Adam Back is another one. Yeah.
Great. So maybe our last question as we're just hitting the top of the hour. So
Thanks.
very, very valid question about, so let's say I got $50 in my Bitcoin wallet. How do I move that into my bank? And how does that work?
Sure. It's a question I get all the time. Thanks for asking it, whoever asked it. So there's a few ways you could do it. One is you can open a brokerage account, okay, a crypto brokerage account, and then you'd actually send the Bitcoin to that brokerage account. Now they know who it is. They know it's you. They will then you're going to sell it in the open market, and they'll give you Canadian dollars in your brokerage account, and those Canadian dollars then can now be transferred with e-transfer to your bank. So in my case, I'm allowed to transfer up to 10,000 Canadian dollars a day, right? By e-transfer, they would transfer it back to my bank account. So that's pretty much it. Let's say though that you didn't have that option. All right. So say you're one of the unbanked people that are in Canada. There's not many, but there are, especially some First Nation people and some immigrants. You're one of the unbanked people. Well, this would actually be fun, Cassie. We can do a follow-up on this. You can just go find an ATM machine, a Bitcoin ATM machine, that same app on the phone that you just used. You just go there, you'd click, you want to sell your Bitcoin, you'd scan it, send it, it'll go through to the machine's Bitcoin wallet, and that'll transact, and that machine will spit out the dollars. In this case, the $50 will come back out to you. So it's that easy. Or there's peer-to-peer meetups where people meet up and will swap Bitcoin for dollars. There's people that go that way. Once you tried it a couple times, it's really not that hard.
Cool. Very interesting. All right. So we got hit the top of the hour. I did want to share for those who are interested in learning more. Of course, Jeff also has a crypto empowerment course. It's 8 modules, 90 minutes long, over 8 weeks. If you're interested, he runs these not only for different organizations and different groups, of course. You can learn about setting up a wallet, navigating blockchains and purchasing Bitcoin and other crypto, how to increase your value with NFTs and how that works, and making sure don't fall prey to scams and hacks and things like that, and understanding how to use crypto in your business, investing in it, and your future sovereign self, being able to basically go anywhere around the world and having a digital wallet with you. So I'll leave the slide up here, and I'll quickly put Jeff's email as well into the chat for those who are interested. Of course, you can put it there.
Thanks, Cassian. Appreciate that. I use a Gmail for this because it's a good catch-all, right? If I do any more serious business, I have much more secure emails, as you can imagine. But this is a good one for talks like this.
Absolutely, Gmail's used around the world over. So thanks everyone for attending this evening. Thanks so much, Jeff, for your time this evening, for putting this together, and for educating us all a little bit more about the world of Bitcoin. And thanks for the $50. I'll make sure it goes to a very worthy place in Ukraine. And thanks everyone again for enjoy the rest of your evening. And Jeff, any last words from your end?
I just want to thank you to everybody that shows up, and thank you to everybody that watches this recording. Freedom money means a lot to me, and I appreciate all of you considering this and being part of this. Let's make the world a better place.
All right. Thanks very much, Jeff. Thanks everyone for attending. Have a good rest of your evening. Bye-bye.